Wonderkids. There's nothing more sad than you getting a Wonderkid with ridiculous potential and not helping them reach it. In this video, we are going to go over how to develop your young players. And I say we because I have potentially one of the best people at doing it, Mr. Omega Luke.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on, Luke. Appreciate you being here. So let's start talking about these Wonderkids. What's the first thing that you do when you get a Wonderkid come through your youth system or you buy one? What's the first thing you look to do to try and improve them?
To improve them, I think it's look at whether they are potentially ready for game time. Because in my opinion, I think that's something that really helps a player development if they have that potential to start reach that potential is the game time. So whether I can loan them out to a league below or something like that, or whether I think they'll be good enough in my reserve team, for instance, bump them up a level, because the higher standard that they're playing also is better for them rather than just playing for, say, under 18. So I think that is the main thing that I first look at when I determine that a player is a Wonderkid.
So you're speaking there about loans. At what point do you look to try and loan them out? For me personally, I like to keep a close eye on their development up to till 18. Once at 18, I try to get them game time, whether it's at my club or I'll loan them out to affiliates or whatever. But I always make sure to at least set it to regular starter if I do loan them out.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you, especially like certain leagues as well. They have like specific rules, like Germany, I think. You're not allowed to loan a player out until they're 17 or even play a player until they're 17 or whatever it is. Which I'm exactly the same. I think keep them in your team 16, 17. When they're near 18 or start becoming, or they actually are 18, that's when I look at, right, you need game time, first team football now. None of this coming off the bench or rotation player. No, I'd rather keep them at my team if that's the case. I'd rather find a team who need this player as a first team regular, so that I know that they're guaranteed to be given the best amount of game time throughout the season if possible.
100% agree with you there. I don't know if you know this player, you probably do. Rafael Luiz. He's obviously got 16-year-olds at the beginning of the game, model citizen personality, and I bought him.
Benfica?
Yeah, from Benfica, and I bought him for my gang side. So he arrived as a 16-year-old and I have kept him in my team, and he's currently 18 and he's already played 26 games for my first team. I was bringing him on as a sub late on in games, getting him game time, but also working on his training. So one of the first things I did when I got to my club was I requested to get the youth facilities improved, increase the junior coaching, try to improve the infrastructure at the club. Is that something that you do too?
Not necessarily. The main reason why is the youth facilities, which are in the actual gamers, like your club's youth facilities are for your youth intakes. So training facilities is my first thing that I go to, because any player that's going to be in my under 19s, for instance, they're going to be dealt with through the training facilities, and youth facilities are like your youth prospects from your youth intakes coming through, if that makes sense.
Yes, I asked for everything from the board, so anything that the board can give me, I get. So
if you don't ask, mate, you don't get. That's the problem, right?
100%. And one other thing that I do is I always go and make sure I have the best staff for my under 19s and my under 20s, as well as my main team. And I think that's something that gets overlooked, is the staff for the younger teams.
100%, yeah. I think it's not even down to like people don't know about it half the time. I think it's just down to laziness. I'm exactly the same. Like, because really, if you're going to look for the best youth coaches at your level, unless you are one of the top clubs in Europe so you can attract the best, it's very hard to find coaches who are good at youth level or your level. And I think that's maybe something that people just, I'll just get a technical director and let them deal with it. I'm exactly the same. I struggle with finding motivation to spend an hour or two finding these youth coaches. But if you do, the rewards you can get from it, like you mentioned, is next to giving them as much game time as possible, really.
Yes, I think it's also hidden compared to the normal staff. The staff has a tab at the side, and that's for your first team. But to get to the unders ones, you have to go to Dev Center, and then staff, and then click on the staff for the certain teams. So it's
I don't think it ever used to be like that either, did it?
I don't remember it being like that, but it's also a bit hidden. But you're right. It's more difficult to find good coaches for those teams, because good coaches at those levels will want to be first team coaches. They'll want to move up. So it is a lot more challenging to get coaches for your under 18s, for example. But I find it definitely helps, especially for those younger teams.
Absolutely, and the experience as well that you can add to it. Like, so as soon as you get like a staff member, sorry, who has like a higher reputation, like they want to go to a bigger club. So even just finding somebody who has good working with youngsters and then has like attacking coaching or defending coaching above 15 is sometimes impossible for depending on what level of football you're at.
Here's a question. Say if you have an outstanding 16-year-old, do you move them to your first team and set them to be available for your under-21s or under-18s?
Yes, it depends how good they are, really, because I'm not afraid of putting a player in. If I think, say, for instance, I have a 3-star, we'll just go by star ratings. If I have like a 3.5-star rated right winger in my first team, say he's 25 to 27 years of age, but I have a 16 to 17-year-old who's 3-star current ability, I will play the 3-star current ability if he has a higher potential. Because in my head, I'm thinking he's going to be better than him in the long run. The quicker he's better than him, the better. So I would rather play him first than play the older guy who potentially is at his max potential that he's ever going to get to. So the short term, I might suffer from it slightly in player performance, but long term, I'm going to benefit because this player is going to be better immediately. But absolutely, if it's the case of I can bring him into the first team, use him as a substitute, bring him on sporadically, but also make him available for my under-19s or my B team, for example, I will definitely 100% do that because then I can keep track on him. And then I think like cup games, if he hasn't got a game that day, stick him in. Why not?
Yes, 100%. That's exactly what I do. Is I always have them, ones that you think are going to make it, the ones that are potentially 4.5-star, 5-star, I always have in my first team and available for the unders, just so that they're getting games if they're not in my first team. But I'll always have them on as a sub if I can.
Yes, absolutely.
So with training then, how do you set up your training for these youngsters? For me, say if I've got a midfielder, I love the box-to-box training role because it covers so much. It gives such a broad range for a player. Everything you need in a midfielder, box-to-box pretty much covers. And I tend to always add in passing because I like my players to be able to pass well. What do you do for your training if you're training a midfielder, for example?
I'm exactly the same as you. I look for the individual or the player role which has the most benefits. So, for instance, I think striker's complete forward because obviously that sounds like it's going to be the most anyway. It does cover the most attributes on the player page, but for midfielder, box-to-box midfielder, and I think wide centre-back might be the highest, but I don't really tend to use that unless it actually is a potential for a good wide centre-back, like with good crossing ability, dribbling ability. Like a ball player defender would probably be what I used beforehand if it was like a centre-back, for instance. I'm exactly the same for you. Individual training, look at what they will benefit from the most. And then, of course, like it's down to an individual basis as well, right? If you have a centre midfielder who looks like he's going to be amazing, has 5-star potential, but only has like 11 passing at the beginning, then I would obviously give him individual training for passing. But if his passing's already 15, 16, maybe he has slightly lower dribbling or first touch, then I'll look to do that. It does vary player by player, but as a general thing, box-to-box midfielder is definitely the one I would always go to because, like you say, has the most attributes that it covers. And
you're 100% correct. It's complete forward that looks like it covers the most because that's what I have Benjamin Sesko training on with my Genk team.
What a player, by the way.
Oh, he's absolutely ridiculous. I also have him training at aerial as well to get his heading and bravery up because I have him at near post corners and he's lethal.
You have to. You just have to, mate. Near post corners, the people that take the mick out of me for using it or saying you're breaking the match engine, at the end of the day, it's in the game. If you got to make the most out of it if it's in the game.
In real life, if managers could do that in real life, and they could use that, they would 100% do it.
Well, they do, really, don't they? People do use it. They use set piece routines, and some things work a lot better than others. So I don't understand it when people get so gnarly about it or using stuff from tactics like that. I think at the end of the day, it's a game, and if I want to play it with near post corners, I'm going to play it with near post corners, and using somebody like Benjamin Sesko, who is a bit of a beast at them, training to be better in the air at heading, bravery, things like that, and jump and reach, then you might as well, because that's an extra 2-3 goals a season for you.
Oh yeah, 100%, exactly the same. So how much do you use mentoring for player development?
I think last year I used it a lot more than what I have this year. This year I've been a bit lazy with mentoring, but I don't even know if I've touched the tab yet. But last year I really dove into it because I wanted to learn a lot more about it, because I think last year was my first year of really using it more. And I did see a lot of benefits from it, personality-wise, because I've learned a lot about developing youngsters recently in the last couple of years on what attributes, hidden attributes, are important for that, such as professionalism. We know now if a player has really low professionalism, it's going to be hard for them to train better, which means that their development isn't going to be as good as what it could be. And if you have players who are model professionals, model citizens, things like that in your team, you might as well use them, because hidden attributes can increase quite well during mentoring groups. And I think last year I definitely benefited from that. It's something that I need to work on using this year.
So I'm currently using one mentoring group, and I've got a couple of influential players. I've got a team leader is Amaduzic, who has a perfectionist personality, and his influence on the group is significant, and most people in my group get significant effect from it. And all those guys that are getting a significant effect from it are generally 18 or below. It's hidden attributes, so it's difficult to see. But if you can improve a player's professionalism by 1 or 2 behind the scenes, that's going to help them reach their potential. Because professionalism, they're going to train better. Their ambition, they're going to aim higher to be better. So getting things like that, I think, is something you might not notice straight away, but in the long term, you will see advantages of it.
Well, you're 100%. I think like everybody used to think it was determination and work rate. Now that does play a factor into development, but I think we kind of realize now you can have a player with like 2 or 3 determination and they could still become the world's best player if they have good professionalism. And not even to say that if you have bad professionalism, a player can still develop if given the right circumstances. You know, we've mentioned training facilities, coaching, and gameplay. If they're getting all that, sometimes professionalism doesn't matter. But as a whole, professionalism for me is something I will look to. And if I'm scouting a Wonderkid who maybe I don't know their hidden attributes, maybe it is a regen, for instance, or a new gen, and it says an unprofessional personality or a fickle personality, I tend to avoid them.
I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same.
I think personalities are really important. In the last couple of years of Football Manager, I've really found that I've been looking for personalities over anything.
So would you actually go and buy an older player with, say, a model citizen personality purely for the mentoring aspect, if you could afford him to add to your team?
Unless he gave me something in my actual first team, probably not. I wouldn't buy him. I used to. I would buy... when it was back before it was just tutoring instead of the mentoring groups, where it was a 1v1 kind of tutoring side of things, I used to buy older players with 20 determination just to try and get that bump with my youngsters. But now I don't do that. I would only buy a player if they were going to value the first team as well. Simply because it's money and wages that I could spend on another Wonderkid. So I would rather have more Wonderkids than just having some guy just to teach them, if that makes sense.
So what do you do if you find a Wonderkid that has model citizen personality? Would you immediately go and snap them up? I did that with Raphael Luiz and Willett Swedberg, and I one day hope that those guys eventually become team leaders, and I could use them to mentor everybody else.
That's definitely the plan. I think so. If you're planning on a long-term save, that is definitely what you should be doing, because long-term, that's really going to help any Wonderkids, any new gens, regens that you buy. If they don't really have the best hidden attributes, but you don't know that yet, you just look and go, they look really good for their age. They have a 5-star potential. I need to buy them in my team. And you think they're not developing that well, and I'm not quite sure why. These players are what could transform those players into the next world-class players. They could be the difference between that player never making it for your team and becoming a 3-star player for his whole career, or reaching his full potential, being that 5-star player that maybe you sell for 100 million, or maybe transforms your team into a better team in the future.
So speaking there about personality and how professionalism helps a player train, when you have a player that's training well, do you praise them for training well? Because I do that pretty much every single time, and every single time I praise them, the next time they train better. And then they continuously keep training better. So I find praising really helps with their player development.
Yeah, I praise and criticize the first one, mainly because I'm lazy and the button's there to do it. But I know, like in the past, when I've actually gone through and I've looked at the training ratings, if I've got a lot of time, I'll go through, and everybody that's got a good training rating, I will go down and praise them. And it definitely helps. 100%, it definitely helps, because I think I'll find, because I'm only praising the one person, for instance, on my PSV save right now on Twitch, it's Lorenzo Luca. He has a high professionalism. He's been my best trainer, and every time I praise him, he's the next time we have a training report, he's the best trainer again. So I think it definitely works 100%. And not to mention, you become a favorable person with them because you're talking to them and praising them. They tend to like you more, which means you stand more of a chance of keeping them, which is obviously is another benefit.
That's true. Speaking about time, it does take me a while. Anybody with an 8 rating or above, I tend to go and praise. And I just think it just helps them keep that momentum with their training.
I do warn players, but I think that always depends on their happiness. Which is obviously another factor in development, because even if they have high professionalism, sometimes if they're unhappy, they could still train bad.
I often find that when you criticize a player, their morale actually also increases. It's like they care that you care that they're playing or training bad.
Yeah, I think so too. Unless they're like they are dead set on leaving and there's nothing you can do to change their mind. If I see a player that's randomly in the bad category for training, and I'm thinking, why is that happening? If I like criticize them for that, or even like bad form recently, I know Calates has done a video where it's like if they perform badly and you criticize them or warn the player, their determination or work rate goes up by 1 for a small period of time. It definitely helps. Like some players, and if they have high professionalism, they take criticism better, which is obviously a good sign of a Wonderkid again.
Oh, 100%. It's the fine half a week's wages is what gets their work rate or determination up. If you find them half a week's wage. And if it's under 6.5 or below, I think is the...
Yeah,
the
6.4 or below that, I always go for it, yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that as well, and it's been making a nice little bit of difference to these players that I have.
Yeah, definitely, because like determination and work rate to help a player, like if it increases, like they're both really valuable attributes in a team, especially if they're youngsters, for morale if they go down and things like that, and obviously winning the game, seeing a game out. It's really valuable attributes. So if all of your team are up by 1 or 2 in the work rate or determination, it's going to benefit your team hugely.
So is there anything else you'd like to add on how you develop your players? I think we pretty much covered most of what we tend to do for developing our players. Is there any last thoughts?
No, I just think as long as you're hitting the main factors, if that guy is destined to be good, as long as you're hitting the main factors of having decent training facilities, giving them the game time, and really if you want to look at mentoring because it definitely helps, then I don't think you can go far wrong. Obviously, things like injuries and stuff you can't help. So obviously, like consistency in important matches, when it's still a Wonderkid, it can still affect the player. But development-wise, you should be fine. And as long as they have that half decent professionalism, as long as you hit those main factors, you should be absolutely fine with developing your Wonderkids.
I think one thing we should mention is it all has to be done together. There's not one thing that will work in Football Manager. You can't just say, I'm going to train this player on passing and that he's going to be the best player in the world. You have to hit all of these different marks. Nothing works in isolation in Football Manager, as we well know.
Yeah. Absolutely. The more things you hit, the better you'll benefit. And I think that goes across for the whole game. As long as if you're looking into training more, then your team will slightly benefit from more than that. If you're looking into morale more, your team will slightly benefit from that. So if you're putting it all together, then you're gonna benefit a lot more than what you would if you did none of it.
Well, thank you very much, Luke, for coming on to my channel, and appreciate you giving up your time to do this video. Where can everybody find all your content?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Really do appreciate it. I love talking Wonderkids, and if you want to talk more about it, you can find me on YouTube, Megaloot Gaming, or on Twitch, Megaloot Gaming as well. Come across there. We've got a stream going on right now with PSV. We're doing quite well. We've got a lot of Wonderkids on there. So if you like Wonderkids and enjoy that, then you can find me there.
I think we've probably got quite a few of the same Wonderkids, actually. Luca, Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah, it's the favourite ones, isn't it, this year? They're so good. It's like when Haaland was in an FM19. It's just like the favourite ones to go to.
Do you have Almada as well?
Do you know, I tried avoiding him because I've used him for so long. I remember this season, I seen he was available for like 6 or 7 million. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go for him because I go for him every single year.
I went for him and I've not regretted
it. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be the last time we can now. He's going to the MLS. He's turning 21. It could be the last time he's actually a Wonderkid in the game.
Yeah, that's a real shame, isn't it? It's a real shame. Anyway, thank you very much. All the links to Luke's stuff will be in the description, so go down there and check it out. Thank you very much for coming on. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And cheerio.